He said he was going to.
Okay.
I haven't heard from the
Select
town
board.
administration.
Okay, I get it.
So you're calling to order, right?
We are calling to order the Monday, March 11th, 2019 Town Government Study Committee I've got 1:06 p.m. First item is the approval of the agenda. And the motion
So
to
moved.
approve is written. Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any public comment?
None.
Because there are no members of the public present. Ms. Williams put a shred of doubt into us at the last meeting about quorum versus if we can have the quorum with one on the phone or not, et cetera. Just to be on the safe side, can we have a ratification of the approval of the minutes of January 28th,
So moved.
2019? Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And February 11th, 2019. Got a motion for that
Moved.
one. Motion made, second. All those
Aye.
in favor? Aye. Was March 4th, I apologize, was March 4th circulated?
I don't recall.
Okay, if not, then that's on me. Christie was very diligent. She sent the meeting minutes immediately after. Kudos to Christie. They may not have found their way to your inboxes.
Actually, I do think I remember them.
She's
They
like
were
Lee
very
Sacristy
quick,
types
but
them as
maybe
we
we need
go,
to
right?
wait anyway.
And that's fine. So we'll hold off on that until our meeting on, I believe the 25th is our next date. So the real topic for the day is the handout that we're going to give the select board and to those at town meeting. I've circulated our topics to investigate that we had for a while, and the position papers that we had initially, sort of ones to investigate further. I mean, I'm sort of assuming that we would just do a pretty simple handout of the town government study committee, who we are, what we do, and topics we've been, I think just looking at the topics, just listing the topics that we have here. I mean, unless somebody thinks we should do something
Should
otherwise. or
we
add more.
list some that we have decided not to proceed on, or is that a negative impact? I don't want to scare them away. I'm more positive than
Yeah,
negative.
I think I'd be inclined to just leave it at what we are,
Okay.
not what we,
Yeah, I'm not sure I agree with that. I mean, think about it. So if we've thought about it,
And
let's,
decided not to.
let's pretend it was about a representative town government. We decide not to. Would you think we should then not comment?
Well, that's a
Probably
good
not,
point.
so, you know.
Yeah, we've considered options which we do not feel are appropriate or need to be
I
followed
think it's sort of
through.
worth putting out there, because someone might disagree with them. for
Yeah.
example.
all right, so I guess the one big question is gonna be the, Teresa Williams,
Ombudsman?
yeah,
Yeah,
Did you
so,
respond to the INO?
Linda did.
Okay,
She had called him,
okay.
set him straight.
But what did she say? Do you know?
She said.
who's she?
Linda.
Linda.
Yeah, I'm not
Okay.
sure I like her responding for the committee unless we know what she said. So.
Right.
Basically, how did she phrase it? That we were not we're not a recommendation body, in other words. This type of thing was not necessarily in our purview.
Yeah, but can we go back a second, just so we understand? There was a town meeting, and I don't have a copy of the amended article that was passed by town meeting. And I think town meeting, the amended article, in the back of my mind, said something like referring to the government study committee.
Mm.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I think if that's the case, we owe more than, if we're not, whatever the hell
Mhm.
Linda said. I mean, that's my feeling,
Sure.
John. I think that's ducking the issue. And she's related, so she shouldn't be ducking the issue on our behalf
Mm.
without our express approval of that. And
The way I understood it was it should go back to the town government study to see if it was something we could look into, but not necessarily that we should advise or recommend.
right, but then I think we ought to pass a motion and say we choose not to look into it. I mean, that's what we're doing.
Right.
If that's what we're
Right.
doing, okay? So anyway, that's my view.
Well, I agree with everything up to the very end there. Like, I mean,
I don't know, I mean, we are somewhat of a recommendation committee, are we not?
Yeah, I sort of agree. I'm
Yeah.
not sure I understand what we're not.
Yeah, I think we are.
So,
I agree with that too.
And I feel that we have looked at it and we have determined with guidance from town council and others that it is not something that we're recommending, is more or less what I,
I think that's what we said.
Yeah.
If we're afraid to do that, I'd rather make a motion and get it on the record.
that's
People
fine.
can vote yea or nay.
Yeah.
right.
Works for me.
And that's fine, then
Yeah.
why don't we formally do that? So assuming that this motion is gonna have two purposes. One is to finally get it on the record, our position on this matter. And two, that this is something that we would be including on our handout.
I apologize, I haven't been able to be at the last few meetings, but this has been on my list. What I had planned was, to briefly discuss today, and I can write up, essentially the summary of the conversations, if you will, that have happened with town council via email and others, so that at our 25th meeting, we could say, unless there's an urgency to do it today.
Well, the urgency for today was going to be for the update to the select board.
Okay.
About 2 weeks ago, I said, hey, can I get on the agenda on the 13th? Or I said,
This Wednesday?
yes,
Okay.
or the day before. I went in to go see Libby last week, and I don't think they put us on the agenda.
You didn't?
I don't believe they did. I think they simply forgot.
What's new?
So they said, well, do you want to? Well, how about how about before town meeting? So, okay, it's fine. So I don't know that we have the true urgency to get everything
Done for day after tomorrow.
exactly.
Anyway, one way or another, it seems to me there are a couple of reasons, whether I don't mind waiting until
Mhm.
Tucker can complete
Yeah.
his report, but we have the finance committee that's made comments about this, and we have the INM, and I think they're worthy in, not an emergency, but we should get back to them a little more correctly than it sounds like Linda did, or at least we didn't have a
So
vote on
Tucker's
that.
gonna prepare a response, a paper, a statement? Is that what you just said?
Yeah, well, I intended to prepare this says study the value of an ombudsman. So I was planning to prepare more or less like a one-page
A summary.
summary of the discussion and where we ended up on it, if you
So
will.
quick question on the ombudsman.
Yeah,
What Mr. Pearson and the Williams family was suggesting was almost more of a committee. And I wasn't sure if, when you were saying the ombudsman, you meant somebody as more of a non-voting taxpayer representative.
well, that is originally how
Yeah.
I used the term.
Right.
But in either case, it's felt like in the course of the discussions, and correct me if I'm not hearing things correctly from the group, but it felt like it does not make sense to have in terms of the Williams issue, to have a separate channel for these things. There already is a system for, or several systems for addressing these types of concerns. Maybe there's further education that can be done about how to address an issue.
Right.
But then with the case of, John Giorgio was, advising or noting, maybe is a better word, that, ombudsman, number one, there aren't any that he's aware of in other municipalities in the state. Number two, that, traditionally the term connotes more of like malfeasance versus, I think, the intention of the non-voting taxpayer version of it.
That's,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I feel like we're neither recommending either one of those.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I wasn't sure because I feel like the term sort of morphed into two things.
Yeah,
Well,
correct.
From the get-go, and I don't think that was ever the intention, but
Yeah.
it's fine. Okay, that would be great.
Yeah.
So, what's sort of the consensus here? Do we want to include in this handout things that we did look at and say, hey, this was not
Well, I think
Is
Rick's
that-
got a good
this hasn't-
point, that
this
if
hasn't
we,
been worth our
if
time,
we
or we don't think
don't
it's-
say we've looked at them,
Sure.
people are gonna say, well, why didn't you look at them? So let's list what we looked
I
at.
think we ought to put everything.
Yeah.
These things we felt were appropriate to move forward, and these things we felt were not in our purview, or however we wanna say it.
Okay. Formatting question. Is it, we're trying to make this one page, or one page, two-sided, or a?
Well, let's see how long it is, John. I mean, I think if
I mean-
you get on one page and you don't have to go to 6-point type,
That looks like where we may be going.
you know. so I
And if
think-
you have to flip to do the backside,
Okay.
I'd rather do that than have to staple two pieces
I'm-
of paper together.
I'm curious if we're looking, in terms of the update for town meeting, what people's attention span would be. If they say, okay, well, we can captivate them for one page, but do you lose anybody as soon as they have to
I
flip?
think it's too bad. If we feel it's appropriate to say
Right.
27 extra words that cause the page to flip, that's what we ought to do.
Let's
Yeah,
do it right.
27 words.
Right.
It might be helpful just to do a handout at town meeting that says, these are the things we're looking at, these are the things we're not, and then at the bottom, like, learn more on our website where we
That's a
could
great
have
idea.
a longer, because I see, like, all the different questions here that we're looking at in the write-up from September. Like, if I got this at town meeting, I wouldn't read it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, oh
just
yeah, I know.
having, we're looking at
Right.
basic form of government, organization, and org chart, audit and code enforcement, like, just kind of list the bulleted
Mhm,
points of what
mhm.
we're looking at.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then put something on our website, on the town website, that kind of has all of this stuff laid out.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea at all. And that would be good for us to sort of gear up for town meeting, that we could have all the information on the website, so that if people actually didn't look at the website at town meeting, we would have it.
You know, one thing to think about, John, if we have a list that we're sort of all comfortable with as our like to-dos or whatever you want to
Mhm.
call them, is to, you know, when we send out the agenda, send out the to-dos every time
Mm.
Yeah.
and post them on the website. So if somebody, you know, in theory, all the documents reviewed by the Board of Selectmen or other committees should be up there. Now,
Yeah.
I'm not being fussy about that.
No,
but
I
think
sort of
this is a
am.
good one.
Yeah, I agree, and that is definitely not one of my strong suits of figuring out who to email about updating the website. And that's, I'll be the first to say that.
Florencia, I think, may be the person.
Yeah, and in other words, if
Okay.
you
Okay.
just, even if you just talk to, because I'm sure you're in the office periodically down there, hi Florencia. I've got, in addition to the agenda, I have a document, or it's a
Yeah.
package, or whatever she calls
Okay.
it. I mean, it's up there for the committees that are,
Oh, sure, select where the board, ZBA's has theirs, Concom, everybody,
Yeah.
yeah, everybody's got their packets, so there's no reason we can't have ours. No, I agree. Fundamentally, I agree with that. Okay. So,
do you want to go through these and
I
start
think
thinking
that's a
about
good- I
which
think
ones
that's a
we've
good
sort
idea.
of concluded, or
I think that's a,
sort of where are we on these, or?
Do I have another one available?
I sure do,
Um,
I sure do.
Thank you.
Oh,
Now
this
we-
is even-
I know I had it, but I don't know where it is.
I didn't bring that version either.
Oh,
I just-
okay. Then
I think
this September one might be a little bit more,
Do you have another
The
one?
Oh.
September one had more,
Had more
more
stuff on it.
organization.
I've got it in here someplace, but,
more
okay.
words.
There's nothing wrong with that. All right, so mayoral versus council form of government, I mean, I think 1 and 2 are sort of together
Yeah,
Mhm.
I
on
would
this, and I think that's fine too.
just call it form of government.
Exactly.
A form of government, and there's essentially 4 options, but you have mayor, council, representative town meeting, open town
Mhm.
meeting.
Yeah,
So,
I think that's fine to include that. Number 3, the future and the term and the role of the town government study committee.
2-year term, we're in the first term. Isn't that what we understood?
Well, so, except that initially they didn't have us as 2-year terms. We were all, we're all annual.
you know, I think another way to think about it, since this committee is, supposed to convene every 5 years, I think,
Yeah.
by the bylaw.
Either 5 or 7, yeah.
Whatever that is. The committee could be empowered to serve until it submits its final report. In other words, why have a term? I mean, you could, but otherwise, people working for a year and then they're kicked off, which maybe that's fine too.
Mhm.
But I don't think that was the intent.
Right.
Right,
And
it
I
was
think
to
when Alan
issue
has
a
his
report.
committee before, he was there for 2.5 years.
I think that's right.
My only thing about not having a term limit, it kind of doesn't set an expectation of when it should be done.
Right, but we could do that separately, so to speak. So could the board. The board could say, we're empowering you to issue a report. We expect the report to be issued within
Yeah.
2 years. And I think they could step up and say that, or we could go back to them. and
I
say
think,
that.
I have to
Yeah.
go back and look at the minutes, but I believe that we all are appointed until 2020, June of 2020, or until we've completed the report if
Right,
it's
because they
earlier.
had an extension after the first.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
yeah.
that's right. I think that's exactly right. All right, well, we can sort of add something on that one.
I would move this further down the list if this is intended to be in order.
Okay.
I mean, to me, it's sort of a thing
Yeah, I mean,
It's
toward
almost
the
a
end.
follow-up.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
It's like,
So we sort of want the sexier ones up.
Right,
up front.
yeah.
Yeah. Continue the active review of committee mission statements on a regular basis. I feel like we said no to that one, but that just may be my.
I'm not sure who even raised it or why it was an issue. I mean,
It was on the former
Uh,
review.
It came out of that
It came
one.
out of that of things that they didn't get to but recommend.
You know, I think because there's a statement isn't there a statement in the bylaw or whatever that is?
About what?
I mean, I think
that each committee will,
each one
Yeah.
will do
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
So let's look on, I mean, I think you look first to the reserve at the pleasure of town meeting, or
Yep.
in this case, the Board of Selectmen. Generally speaking, they ought to be responsible for giving us our charge.
mhm.
And we shouldn't be making up our charge, is my
Right.
sense.
It's-
We can add to it or
Certainly-
recommend changes, but
Certainly don't disagree with that. Audit committee, review the structure of that.
well, I think we might talk about, and we could even put in here when you go to the board, that we've talked about adding 2 independent members
Yeah,
Mhm.
I think the
To that-
independence is important.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
to that committee. And I don't know if we voted on it, but we certainly could. I didn't hear anybody object.
No, there certainly wasn't anything on that. The org chart.
Well, I think we probably ought to have a follow-up with the town manager on the org chart. I think we handed out the one from 2014, didn't we? Which was
I think we
Did you see
have one
that
or
one?
two.
Mhm.
Yeah.
that ought to be a gem to tell you how awkward things are in reality, compared to the one Libby handed out, which is, for example, has a public safety, implies there's a public safety manager, which there isn't.
Mm. Mhm.
So it just doesn't make sense to me that you have a org chart that doesn't follow the
Doesn't.
individuals responsible for major units.
Right,
That's fair.
yeah.
That's just my sense.
So I assume that would be one that we would be having towards the top as well, that we're gonna
Yeah.
review
Yeah.
and analyze.
And we can talk to her, but we may want to recommend that she be responsible for bringing it to the board once a year, just for information. It gives them a chance, number one, it forces them to know it exists,
Well, that's.
which right now they have
that's
no
a-
clue.
That's a good point, too.
It appears in, it appears in the town annual report, which is not reviewed by the board prior to its publication. And I don't recall seeing it on an agenda for 10 years, I'm sorry.
It's,
but
it-
for a
it's
long time.
an interesting point.
Well, I
like
think
that.
it,
I'd put that up higher then.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think it
Yeah.
meshes with the, what we were talking about regarding the Williams concern, like it's more definition about who's in charge day to day of certain things and who to go to perhaps to get a certain
Well, it's
something
nice to know.
answered,
So,
yeah.
you know the fire chief reports to the town manager, not to the public safety person who doesn't exist.
Yeah,
Right.
You know.
Continue to review the process procedures for making appointments to boards and commissions.
You know, I think I tried to explain this before we talked about it. There is one right now. To me, it's an administrative matter, not a matter for the charter or the bylaws to define
So, and
I don't wanna say we looked at it and don't wanna,
I say,
we
so
feel
I,
it's an administrative matter, stop, or something like that.
so I agree with you 100% philosophically. Do we include it on the handout as something that we've looked at and said that, hey, this is not in our purview, we think this is an administrative matter?
Wasn't that what we just said we were gonna do?
And I'm
I
just,
think-
so this would be one that we would
I
include.
think we could.
then.
You know,
Because we can say we have looked at it, therefore we choose not to chase it down, but we've looked at it, and that's fine. So-
Mhm.
And we could also, if we sort of half remembered, where it came from. In other words, did we make it up, or did a citizen bring it to us? Was it from the last, a question at the end of the last government
Mhm.
report?
Right.
That's kind of helpful to know, it seems to me, if we all remember.
So that, yeah, well, I mean, this was as a result of someone was concerned about how appointments are made, or?
I'm not sure,
Yeah.
I
Yeah, there
don't
were-
think I brought it up.
No, no,
If you
no.
look around here, I
I'm
don't
trying to
think-
remember.
I
where-
think this is Linda. I think this is a Linda
Yeah.
pet.
Oh,
This could be Linda, because at the time, there was a park and rec appointment,
oh,
you'll
right.
recall.
Yep.
And someone didn't get appointed by the town manager, and someone else did.
Yeah. Right.
Enough said.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because when I applied for this committee, I was not appointed, even though I was on the last one. And then when there was a resignation, then I was the next up and
Yeah.
came up. So that's outside the committee, they were maintaining the list.
Which again is a great one for number 8, maintain the list of interested.
I don't think we
citizen
need to do
volunteers.
I think it's their job, and I sort of think they
Yeah.
do it anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't think that's a look at and goodbye.
I didn't mean that.
Let's not-
I
let's
just
not
meant,
get
is this
crazy,
one that we
Christie.
should actually put, that we've reviewed it, and we think that the town is already doing this?
Yeah.
Do we want
I
that?
think
included?
Yeah.
Okay.
Again, I think this may be something that was on the last,
Yeah.
it sounds to me like
Yeah.
there were a lot of items like that in the last report. At least I felt that were.
Determining if the town should hire a full-time or part-time grant writer.
This is from the last report as well. I think they've either already
Yes.
done that or it's not relevant.
I think they've really determined that the expertise of departments make them primarily responsible, and they'll get consulting support if
Yeah.
they need it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I think that goes with 9 and 10.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Professional rep to
So that
see.
goes, we've looked at and
Yeah.
no, thank you.
Exactly. Strengthen the code enforcement and coordinate with town council.
Code enforcement meaning HCC, meaning building.
I think across the board. If, in other words, there's, Curtis, for example, the discussion, this was an HDC discussion at the appeal last week.
Hmm.
But it's a normal response, and they were talking about the HDC jurisdiction for swimming pools and all this, and berms and privets.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay. And at some point, a member of the board said, you know, the way to deal with this is if somebody doesn't like it, they complain. I forget what the word that was used by the board member. To me, that's a form of enforcement. If, where they're sort of saying, we're not going to enforce it directly, we're leaving it to the citizens. And I think you'll find there almost a quote from another significant town manager in the paper a year and a half or two ago of a similar nature, that a lot of our enforcement, and in that case, if for example, the swimming pool was not set back far enough, we assume the HDC coordinate, whatever Hen's title is responsible for that.
well,
At
if
least that's
it's,
the way I look at it.
if there's a building permit and it doesn't conform, then the building department can't sign off on the
Right.
permit. And the zoning, Marcus can't sign off on it. So there's,
Right, there's a
Three
form
in.
of enforcement, but I think there are people who become concerned that some items slip through the cracks.
So then they
Are
file-
out there,
a complaint and bring it to the selectmen?
right, but I don't think people are very confident that, how would I put it?
Can I jump in?
You could
So
try it, yeah, I mean,
that some of the employees who are enforcing the code are not doing so correctly and possibly legally, and should perhaps be consulting with town council or a higher authority before making a decision that is for lack of a better term, a bad
Okay, does
one.
this stay on our agenda?
Well, I think it should in a general way, and, because at least in my experience, I found this and it continues through today, a common concern of our citizens who feel the town is not responsive enough, as you just, or in lots of different ways. So, one thought, which was discussed at a prior meeting, was to recommend that the town manager's job description specifically add a paragraph about enforcement, that part of her job is to make sure the town's staff accepts the responsibility so that decisions and regulations are equitably enforced across
Fine.
town, something like
Well, that
that.
makes good sense.
Because then the town manager knows that the town manager has a job to do. At least that was
So
one
we're
idea.
recommending an addition to the job description of the town manager in that sense.
Well, that's a recommendation.
That's fine.
If there's
I'm-
another one, fine, but,
I'm
you know.
comfortable with approaching that problem somehow.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think that's an okay thing to do. I think the town, to its credit, has been getting a little bit better at it,
That's great.
frankly.
But when you say coordinate with town council, does that imply that you go around town administration and try to go to town council? I'm trying to get
Sure,
the wording on that item.
I think my the way that I would look at that would be, I'm gonna pick on the zoning board of appeals just for the time being. If they are going down a path and the decision that they are going to render is going to be a bad one that would be overturned by the courts, and town council can say, look, guys, if you vote against this, you don't have a leg to stand on. You know, try
How does town
something
council
else.
get into that loop then?
That I'm not sure of. That, and I don't know if that means that the administrator has to.
Well,
or
does
if
that
the
go back to
committees-
Libby's description about being responsible?
And maybe it does with that. Maybe.
Okay, well,
But in that case, her works its way down through the chain of command, because there is a staffer who serves the ZBA. And that person, it seems to me, ought to know when to go to town council
Okay.
for
Exactly.
clarification or not. That's part of their job.
I think that's right.
well, I think this should then be on our list, yes. And how you say it, keep working on it.
That's about right. Though. Yeah, no, it is. It's a good.
So that's an up.
Coordinating, clarifying permitting process for building, planning, Concom, HGC, et cetera. I don't want to speak for Plus, but I feel like they may have started that. They may have been working on making things easier
Again, to
for
me,
them.
that's
But-
an administrative
Right.
management issue
Yep.
that you don't solve by charter.
Right.
Absolutely, so that goes on the looked at.
Yep. Standards for eminent domain takings.
Great.
God,
How'd that get
Lord.
there?
Did that come from?
I don't know.
I
Say
sort of
what?
think it's the same thing. To me, you know, you have legal standards, we have an
Yeah.
existing
Right.
process for takings, and if someone was concerned about that, then we can deal with it. But I'm not aware that we've had a problem here.
I don't think we
We've
have.
had a
No.
problem, we didn't file them properly 20 years ago.
I mean, I think they're pretty
Right.
straightforward laws
Yeah.
around what you
Yeah.
can and
Yeah,
can't,
I
yeah.
would just take it off.
All right.
Take it off or say we reviewed it?
Well, we can review it too. I'm not sure
Just
where it
put
came
it down, that
from.
we've looked at and not, choose not to pursue.
Yeah. Election of planning board alternates as opposed to appointment. I feel like that one, again, is a Linda one, and that goes along the same lines as review the process and procedures for making appointments to boards and commissions. And that's just, I think that's just a specific example.
It is, it's a little different in that it, I think if she wants to make a recommendation that the planning board alternates be elected, it's a little different than the process of appointment.
Yeah.
And I know that last time, the government study committee got a little bit bold and recommended that we move to an appointed planning board.
Mm.
I'm pretty sure that was on their articles
Yeah, I
for
think
town.
that was one of the pushes on that.
HGC
Right.
too? Is it HGC too that they were hoping? I
don't
couldn't
know-
remember.
I don't know the
No, I was
Are
involved in
HDC alternates
appointment.
appointed or elected?
HDC, planning board, you mean?
No, but I'm
Oh.
wondering about HDC.
HDC doesn't have alternates.
I thought they
I
do.
don't think, do they? Or do they? No, I think you're right.
I think they have
do.
a.
Yes, they do.
And I
They had a
think they're,
couple
I
of
think they're
two-
elected.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Up in here,
yeah,
I think they are. We should double check, but I'm pretty sure they're elected.
yeah,
But the planning board alternates are clearly appointed.
yeah.
You know,
Frankly, I think that has some strength to it, because you might get qualified people, whereas the popularity of the election process around here, very interesting.
so it's a bit of a balance in this case, because you're electing the planning board,
Mhm.
and town meeting decided didn't want to move to an appointed planning board. But yet you still, in some cases, have appointed members when they're chosen to participate. So I sort of like it the way it is. And I don't know how the rest of you do. Linda, I suspect, is on, which is fine. But we're gonna have to then come to a decision on that one at some point.
I don't have a strong opinion either way. It seems to me that there should be, call it a uniform rationale for both the HDC and the planning board, whatever way.
I would think
Yeah.
consistency would be.
Right.
And if HCC is elected, then theoretically, planning board should be elected.
Well,
Or the other way
Or the
around.
flip side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there's a little difference in that, I'd have to think, I don't know the answer to this. We have an HDC charter from the state that may say, here's how they're elected, or all three.
Well, and as I recall, Linda waves her arms and says, the whole HCC thing is screwed up, and we've got to totally rewrite it and throw it all out and
Right,
do all
and I
over.
think I
That'll
would
take
agree with that,
100
but
years.
anyway, setting that aside, state law does get involved with planning board issues of how they're constructed, elected or appointed. And it may have a comment on this one way or another, I
Right.
don't
I
know.
know.
Well, we
Yeah.
should keep that on the, keep looking at list,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
probably.
It's one of those things where I think we would be wise to have the original documents in front of us
Mhm.
Okay.
for
Yeah,
discussion.
not a bad idea.
But we
Yeah.
need to keep it discussing
Yes,
it.
yeah. We could even add the appointed planning board again, Curtis, if we were bold.
Oh, I'm not sticking my neck out that far. I-
Removing the HDC appeals from the purview of the select board.
That's so funny, that just came
Christie, what?
up. I said that was just this last week's select board meeting.
It's an example.
Right.
Look, the number of, Linda wants to not make recommended changes until we get the big thing done. But I don't know that I agree with that, because that might be 20 years.
What's the
If we
big
think
thing?
some changes are important,
Right.
we can petition the state to change paragraph 10, or whatever it is, if we feel it's important.
What's the protocol in other towns for HCC appeals? As I recall, it's not through the selectmen, is that correct?
That's my understanding.
We're one of the few that go to the.
One, if not the only. In
Well,
other words,
then-
those who have the standard state, there's a section of the state code that tells how HDCs are constructed.
Yeah,
Mm.
But we're over here.
as
And
usual.
We had, about 3 years ago, the board there was a big hullabaloo, you may
Yep.
recall. And we got involved with that state statute, and we moved down, and we're gonna do it, and then we sort of got caught up in the same thing. Oh, we're gonna redo the whole thing. Nothing ever happened. So,
Do you see us going down that path again? Of that way? Hey,
well, I think we might, I don't know how involved we wanna get, but to me, this one, you should know there are two sides to this.
Mhm.
The other side says it's a very inexpensive way for people to seek review,
Mm.
because if their only outlet is to go to the courts, that costs,
Too much money.
John charges.
Too much money.
John charges 20, someone else charges 5, whatever. It's difficult, so there are 2 points of view.
Well, I think we still need to keep it on the
I
discussion.
do
Yeah,
too,
yeah,
yes.
yeah.
That stays on our list.
Separation of the powers and roles and responsibilities for the Board of Selectmen or the Select Board and the Town Manager.
Well, the fact is, the board sets policy and the town manager implements policy. Now, is that what that says?
Yeah, and the charter says that, and
Okay, so,
not always as clearly as you might like,
Right,
but it does
right.
have, it says here are the roles and responsibilities for the board and for the town manager.
okay. So, we keep that on our review list?
I think we could
Yeah,
keep it on
definitely.
there. If somebody has a specific example, we can always move to change it.
Mhm.
Or get involved with the discussion.
Then we have updating the org chart of the town code to reflect plus.
But I think that's just.
May I borrow this for 1
Yeah,
second?
yeah.
I mean, yeah, I think we're
That's
back to that.
back to the org chart.
Now, I will confess, I don't have the September document
Well,
in front
I'm
of me.
trying to look like the sewer commission that's on your list here.
You can look at it.
I just borrowed it.
Oh.
Oh, all right, can I borrow yours, or is that?
We can look together.
All right, let's see.
Well, I've got another one here. Oops, sorry.
Oh,
It's gonna fall down. Here's that, John. Thank you. You can-
Okay, so from the September 17th list, we've got basic form of government, including town council with the mayor, the four forms, considerations, the ease of decision-making, cumbersome election process for representative, further remove from citizen participation,
I think
et cetera.
that's a pretty critical recommendation we're gonna be making,
Mhm.
Oh, yeah.
which will throw a lot of things into the hopper.
Organization, then we have develop an org chart with the clear explanation of roles and responsibilities of the planning board and PNDC. And a plus organizational chart, and then we said that we can also look, we were looking at them for charter provisions of the organization. The audit committee, we're gonna examine the structure of the audit committee. And we sort of talked about having adding two independent members. Code enforcement, who's the responsibility for enforcement, job descriptions, et cetera. I think that's, we sort of hit on that one with the town manager. Election versus appointment of committees, planning board alternates, appointed versus elected, what do other towns do? Can non-voting taxpayers have additional input?
What is our take on that?
I think that I thought we said that we're still gonna look through that one.
I think we're gonna
Which
look through,
one?
you know, for example, I think it was Mike
Election.
Lowacki had an
Election
article
versus
to
appointment.
change the finance committee appointment to the
Yes.
moderator.
Yeah.
So there are, not infinite, but there are a lot of options here. And I think we have to have in general, some reason why we're not happy with what we're doing.
Right.
To move to an alternative, or someone ought to recommend an alternative.
So are we still looking at that?
You know, I'm content as a general rule with what we're doing right now, but that's.
I'm just trying to see if.
I think we're still looking at it simply because I don't think.
Which one is this again?
Non-voting taxpayers.
Oh,
Yeah.
Well, no, the whole
Or
committee
just-
Oh,
structure.
just the whole
oh,
committees.
all right, I hear what
The
you're saying.
non-voting taxpayers, if you get specific on a committee, Libby appoints them, they never fill out the committee, they have representation at town meeting. It's sort of like the ombudsman, they can
Mhm.
stand up on every single article, I think, but I'm not sure of that.
like technically, they're allowed to have one spokesman at a
Right.
town meeting.
Right.
But can he speak once or on every article?
Oh, I think he could speak to anything he
Yeah,
wants to.
Yeah, he's
As
a
frequently
non-voting
as we
member of
want.
town
Yeah,
meeting.
yeah.
So that's sort of like a, not an ombudsman,
Semi-ombudsman.
but it gives him a,
Yeah, it gives them a voice, and it's up to them to field the
Yeah, voice, no vote.
representative.
right.
Right.
And, you know, I remember Blitman spoke a couple times, but he may be the only one I remember.
No, well, we have that at St. Paul's. We have people in the vestry who have a voice, but no vote.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
Then we were looking at the HTC charter. I think we've said that we're gonna keep looking at
Yep.
that. The role of the town government study committee, we talked about that. Staff-
Sorry, can I go
ahead.
back for 1 second?
Yeah.
I mean, so just, I think part of the origin of the concern from the non-voting taxpayer group was the gentleman last year who introduced
Yes,
the
that's right.
the
That's
big
right. Yep.
article. Howard, am I right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it was.
But you remember the article last year, Curtis, where it was, you know,
He was.
tens of millions of dollars. I forget
Oh, yeah,
exactly.
Dickler.
Howard
Howard
Dickler.
Dickler.
Yeah,
Yep.
it was that article that where, you know, it kind of came about in the middle of winter. The non-voters, almost by definition, aren't here, and
Yep.
and so there was just kind of a general, like, how are we kept better in the loop of things that really would impact us, type of thing.
You know,
Yeah.
it's tough. Again, to me, it's sort of administrative. If you're interested as a non-voting taxpayer committee member,
Yeah.
all you have to do is spend 5 minutes looking at the Board of Selectmen
Look at
agenda.
agenda.
I'm just picking one, an
Yeah,
example.
yeah,
And you know what the hell's going on.
Right.
And you look at a draft of the warrant. I mean, that's
Right.
sort of what, part of your job, it seems.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and the draft of the warrant, they finally published it online with recommendations, but here we are, we print 3 versions of it with no recommendation. I don't know why they're wasting money printing those other versions. It's crazy. And I tried to read it while I was off island and go through.
I mean, like the one in the paper without recommendations?
Yeah, well, the only one, that it just came up this Friday that they're now with the Finance Committee recommendations.
No, I understand. I think the other one has to do with the structure. There's like I think there's text someplace that forces the board to place the
Define
warrant
the
Yeah.
articles.
early enough or something like that, Curtis, because this
Yeah.
was the board tried to, in fact, town meeting changed. Again, maybe it was the bylaw about the printing of the warrant in the
That's right.
paper. And they were going to just put it online.
right, yeah, and the paper wasn't.
Well,
too
didn't they
thrilled.
drop it? Of course, the ink and them growled.
Mary Ann growled, but not only Mary Ann, there were a few other people who
Sure.
Yeah,
thought
I
Yeah,
hear
yeah.
you.
I wanted access. And one recommendation was just print them, leave them out on the desk at the town building and at the plus department, and as people take them, print some more. So you don't print 10,000, you just print 50. And then you print more when you need them. But that didn't fly.
Well, see, let me give you a good example. I mean, I've been attending the meetings with Mike Burns and all the stuff that DPW is doing, and we're coming up with $60 million worth of road improvements or something. Now, but no recommendation from Finance Committee coming forward. So I see the big picture, but nobody's saying, hey, wait a minute, think about that. And of course, my whole thing here is they vote through at town meeting, then the people who don't go to town meeting turn it all down at the ballot. They constantly turn it down at the ballot. And I've said to Mike, and I've been sitting on their meeting, I said, you gotta work harder at reaching out for state funding or other sources of funding to implement some of your stuff. And one of the answers I get is, well, it's implied, like the Milestone Rotary is implied. Are we gonna get a lot of state money? No state money? Are we paying for it? There are no answers to those questions. And that's the frustrating part of it, so, okay.
But you could have an article, Curtis, that said, if we don't get the state money, we won't do it.
Right.
But we're not doing that. But that's an option.
But that is gonna be a vote of the people who aren't going to town
No,
meeting.
I understand. I'm just saying the town could approach it differently. if
Well,
that's what
maybe
you
they
want.
could, maybe they could, but, you know, my God in heaven, I look at this last one is the average house, $111 over the next 20 years, where I'll be dead. But that is one piece of the cumulative thing. If they all go through, it's gonna be $1,000 over the next 20 years for the average house.
Right.
And not every house is an average house.
All you have to do is look at the warrant this time, and you'll see when you come down to the total funding requirements compared to last year. I'm making this up, but it's up like $9 million. And you say, gee, that seems like a lot for a 2.5, and a lot of it is the votes we've made.
Overrides, yeah.
Overrides for debt service for capital, finally getting borrowed and being put into the system.
Right.
So I don't know about you guys, but my taxes were up, I don't know, $400 last year or whatever. This next year, they're gonna go up 110 or whatever because of
Lucky
this.
you.
Yeah, well, but look, no, not lucky me, but that's what's happening. And
Well-
people are gonna start to, that's why they're gonna vote no on a lot of them.
And they will. And you know, we go through all these machinations with, I just don't see bringing $60 million worth of road improvements out at one time.
And
Now, this is off the
Yeah,
this
agenda,
is
but
off
I'm
the
just
agenda.
saying, the frustration of what's happening and how we may, as a committee, address what to do about that, if there's any way. I'm just venting.
No, I hear you, because the capital program committee report comes through and it's sort of finalized by December 1. I mean, it was. And most of these items that are now in the warrant were on that list, Curtis, so that they're not total surprises 3 months later, but people don't necessarily look there. you
But
know what I mean?
FinCom doesn't comment on those capital
No,
requests.
they just say, good job, and they move them on through. They could comment,
Well, I
it's their
mean,
choice.
I would think they ought to say, where the hell are we getting $60 million?
Right, well, that's, okay, you're right, we're off topic.
Okay.
All right, so, we talked about the role of the government study committee.
Well, is it a role clear enough to be a charter isn't it a charter
It is a
requirement?
charter
It is,
requirement.
Yeah, so why ask the question there?
I think as we have a chance, if we, it's sort of like, as I say, like in a package on our website, we could have a copy of the, which I think in this case is probably already there, but all these things that are already existing, as here are a number of documents of existing bylaws or charters that were among issues we're not considering, but if you want to look at them, there they are, or something like that. It would help bring them
But
out.
I do think we still should be a charter requirement. that-
Yes.
Oh, yeah,
The
absolutely.
5-year review
Yeah,
should
no,
be
I
a
don't
charter
disagree with
requirement. Okay.
The three commissions, licensing, parking, and sewer. I don't know if we want to actually weigh in, other than we're looking into this being a,
Well, I think we ought to, I think that's as
I thought we were kind
close
of
to a
recommending,
charter-
yeah.
okay,
What was that one?
the licensing commission, the parking commission, and a sewer commission.
Right, and I have a little bit of different perspective on one versus the others, and that's the taxing issue of the sewer commission.
Sure.
Licensing, I'm all in favor of totally. What was the other one? Tax-
Parking, I'm not sure.
Parking, the town has already empowered the board to establish a parking district, right, Christie? Yeah, they have. So the Board of Selectmen has the power to establish that commission, and I think they have the power to establish, I'm not sure what they can do, whether it's different from the current parking ticket
Mm.
power,
Mm.
which comes from the state. You
Right.
recall discussions, Charlie Gibson would say, well, we can't raise it more than $2 or can't charge more than $25.
Mm.
So there are restrictions on the parking tickets from the state. I don't know if the parking district legislation gets around that or not. Anyway,
I'm not sure either. I mean, and that I feel is one that the town administration asked us to look into more than, and
so a good thing for us to, in looking into it, would be to get a copy of what we voted in last year, and we'd have it in that package I just talked about, and we'd all be able to look at it quickly. It's a lot of work, how much work you want to do, but there's an answer to that in some ways. And the sewer one, the reason I get very nervous about a independent sewer commission, elected or appointed, that has the power to set sewer rates, or put it another way, I was not, just to share with you, I was not happy that the town didn't have more betterment charges related to the
Oh, you
45
bet.
million over here.
Mm.
And that was a board decision, but I didn't like it. And I can imagine a sewer commission who, rightfully so, gets into the health and welfare, and every house ought to have a sewer. So it's an easy answer. Just
Build
lay
up.
the lines, folks, and put them in no problem.
Right.
But betterment or tax base?
Well, I don't know what they'll do, but I think the easy way out for them in general is the tax base.
Right.
Yeah,
So
bing, bing, bing.
it's an easy $300 million to, I'm just making that up.
yeah.
No,
So
it's
I-
about right, I think it's 345.
All right, but so that one without taxing, I would say fine. For administrative and all, there are all kinds of issues the sewer commissioners could help with. Anyway,
No, it's a good,
And
it's a good
is the
point.
sewer commission implied to be under the health department by somebody?
I think they're usually meant to be separate, because the health department sometimes needs to set standards for the sewers, and you don't want them, I'm just guessing.
I'd
That
assume,
was a 2-second response.
I'd assume you'd have someone from the Board of Health, but it would be under the purview of David Gray. I figured he would be the one, so.
Well, he'd be the staff.
The staff running it, but
Mhm.
I would think you'd have someone from the select board, someone from the Board of Health. and then-
More likely to have a select board appointment process to get started. That's what we
Yeah.
have with the Board of Health now.
Exactly,
Is
Yep.
a select board appointed process.
yeah. I imagine this would mimic that.
So where are we on the sewer commission? Is it is it a discussion item that stays on our list?
I think it probably ought to. I think
All right.
if, you know.
Okay. But I don't
my
think we
point of
should
view,
bury
might
it, so.
Vote it down, but maybe you agree, I don't know.
No, I think in theory, we're in favor of the concept of it, but the devil's in the details, and there are
Okay.
nuances that we would.
So
need to-
essentially, we're in favor of a licensing commission, a parking commission, and a sewer commission in concept for discussion.
I think that's fair to say. Integrating Wanacommet and airport with the town,
That was a recommendation from Lydia, wasn't it?
I think she wanted us, I think that came up for,
It came up as a recommended article for the last town
That's
meeting,
right.
and then someone said, you know, you gotta do these other check things first and think about bringing it back. And they did not bring it back this year. It's all politics, and the 3 members of the Wanacommet board.
That meet at 8 o'clock on a Monday morning when no one wants to
and
come.
never televise their meetings, are very strong in not wanting oversight. And then you look at the compensation level for a couple of their staffers compared to comparable responsibility within the town, and you know what's going on,
Mhm.
and that's not healthy.
I agree.
So,
That concerns me a great deal.
so
is
I
this
think,
something we wanna keep on? Or-
I think we should recommend that it's a good thing as soon as the board's willing to put it on the town warrant.
yeah.
See what happens.
I would agree. I'd like to keep it on the
Put it on
discussion
that
list.
Parks and Rec. Oh, yes. No.
And again, we were gonna get the underlying documents,
Mm.
because what I recall is there's supposedly separate enabling legislation
Mhm.
for the park and rec, like the HDC, and we ought to have it in front of us for that discussion.
I agree.
I think Linda was gonna get it.
That's right, she was gonna do yeah, if you quickly jump into the position paper document.
You know,
she
it
was-
wouldn't have,
refer to that.
but we could, you know, I think if we just said, you know, you could write an email as the chair, Dear Erica, we have 2 or 3 source documents you might
Yeah.
help us find.
Sure.
1 is this, 2 is that, and there are 4 of them.
Right,
And
Yeah, I think we need to go outside the, we'll get around to it part.
not a bad idea.
because she's so darned efficient, I mean, she may hand
Oh,
it to
yeah.
Florenzia, but it'll be back in an hour.
Yeah, exactly, we'll find it.
All right.
And we have the ombudsman and.
I thought we
Tucker's-
just
yep,
discussed that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the others are
We already
repeated
went
what
through
we-
all the
Yeah.
others. And the position paper one still coincides with all of this as well, so.
Now, I
think-
noticed at the bottom of this public hearings, we had talked to some extent about having a meeting, a public hearing of this committee.
Yeah, absolutely, I think that's for the summer.
Yeah, we wanna have one when the summer people are here, but I
Yeah.
think we ought to think about, you know, whenever we're ready to pick a date. I mean, I'm not sure how you get at that, and sort of decide amongst ourselves what time of the day or what day of the week.
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
And pick a calendar date and ask to reserve a room, and, because you gotta get an ad in the paper, you
Sure,
might wanna
yeah.
run an ad
well,
twice.
I'd do it at something like 2 in the afternoon over at the, no?
During the weekday at 2 o'clock?
Well, I'm trying to think of the non-voting people. You're thinking that people,
Yeah, it's not just for that.
okay, well, Rick has been doing the 4 to 6, the DPW.
Oh,
Yeah, I think that's generally a good time. A
I'm
lot of
sorry,
workers
6
are
to 8,
finished.
we did 6 to 8
Mm.
the other night, and, you know,
yeah.
How
the
about-
usual
how about
23
5 to
people
how
went.
about 5 to 7?
I think that's
That
probably
sounds-
fine.
It's a little more
Then
civilized.
people can
Yeah.
get home for dinner if they want
Exactly.
to.
Right.
Yeah.
That's where my head was
That's
at.
fine. I don't really care. I'll be there wherever it
But,
is.
and then how about day of the week? Does it matter?
Mondays are best attended.
Really?
Because they're usually free from other stuff, right? Mondays?
Interesting.
That's just then the time people come to things.
Fascinating.
Okay.
That's when you should hold.
Fascinating.
Oh, there we go.
That's wild. All
Yeah.
right, cool.
So why don't we
Good to
pick
know.
out a Monday in what, June or July?
Well, July is probably better if we really want it seasonal.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I don't have a calendar, but I think,
We should look at when the select board does their, with the,
with the non-voting and,
yeah,
and Mr. Brown and his gang.
yes, exactly, yeah, and maybe keep it a
And
couple
the-
weeks apart.
So you're not gonna
Community
do Fourth of
Association.
July
Yes,
week.
yeah,
You're not gonna do Fourth of July week,
no,
so.
They usually do theirs like the week after that on a Tuesday.
something like that.
So we could do maybe we should pick a Monday after their meeting.
Yes, yeah.
Mm.
So you're
Okay.
saying they usually do the Tuesday after 4th of July?
I think you're right. So
So that
So
would
we
be, that would
do
be
the
like
third
fifth-
Monday then.
That'd be like the 15th, yeah.
15th, okay.
Okay.
So tentatively 7:15, and I assume we do it over the public safety
Yeah.
facility.
That makes sense to me.
And,
5 to 7.
because it can be taped easily.
Yep. All right. So we have our lists. Do you want to take a crack formatting, Christine?
She's so busy running for the board, select board.
Well, but you see, she gets to know all the issues for her
Right.
interview with the
good.
paper,
She's
and
on
she's
top
got
of
them
it.
all
Yeah,
down.
right.
Yeah, I can do that. So don't me read back what I have the topics to investigate, form of government, examining adding 2 independent members to audit committee, develop an org chart with clear explanation to town admin and select board. I don't know what I meant by that.
Yeah.
Clear explanation of responsibilities,
responsibilities.
yeah.
Strengthen code enforcement and coordinate with town council. Investigate election of planning board alternative versus appointment. Remove HDC appeals from purview of select board. Separation of powers for select board and town manager. Investigate creating a licensing commission, parking commission, or sewer commission. How better to integrate Wanacoma and airport operations with the town. Review role and charter provisions of park and rec commission, and then lastly, town government future term role.
So I would say, just there are a couple in there, like how you have the Wanacomment one is like a good way of phrasing it, like with the HDC one, I don't know if, I think you wanna say it in a similar, like, should the,
Yeah.
like not, it's a little.
Should there be more coordination of policies between the town and,
Yeah, I think we want to pose it as like a should this or should that, like
Yeah.
there were a couple in there that were declarative, like remove this from this, I don't know if we want to state it quite
yeah.
like that.
Okay.
No. The more we can hedge, the better.
Right,
Um,
right.
You must have said it, but did I miss the fact that the structure of town meeting
Yeah, that was the
That
first
was
one,
the
yeah.
was the first one? Okay,
I
that's
said
why
Wanacoma.
you said it so
Yep.
fast, I missed it.
Yeah.
so we could put the, get direct and put the contract between the NP and EDC and the town on the list, right, Christine?
Do you want me to add that?
I'm just chuckling with the person running for the board.
I
So
don't
we
know allowed
can-
to talk about.
We can bring your
position.
position out into the public domain, because that could be a litmus test for some people. Just so you know. If you have
Get her
no
get her
opinion,
elected first.
Yeah, right.
if you have no opinion, well then, who cares?
May I steal this since you had 2 copies?
Yeah, oh, yeah.
All right, because that saves me going through an inch of paper. Thank you.
All right, so, Chris, you'll take a shot at that and we'll try to wordsmith it, while still abiding by the open meeting law.
So if this is something we plan to hand out at
Yep.
town meeting, then I guess we can talk on the 25th further, but we kind of have to have
Well,
someone.
we need
man-
something to say, yes, this is it, next.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but-
exactly.
right, we need
Yeah.
that, but then we have to like man a station handing this out. I don't think it can just be left
Well,
sitting there on
I'll
its own.
volunteer.
But also it may be worth talking to Linda, because I know she's, there's certain requirements about font size and so forth of things that you hand
Yeah, it's
out.
pretty simple, but there are.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, that we should
All
look
right,
at.
We'll figure that out too.
It's gonna make it all pretty.
Do we,
So-
is that Linda's job
You
to
wanna
tell
print
us,
a-
or
print a
should
pink paper?
Erica tell us?
Well, Erica can tell it, but I'm just saying Linda's tuned in. I know from past experience. She's
Oh, I
tuned
know,
in.
I'm very much aware of that.
Yeah.
So, next time, we're going to have the paper,
And we're gonna vote on the paper. And we're
okay?
gonna-
And
Get ready
if
for
we have questions on the paper, we could modify it at the meeting and then
Yes.
amend and approve. And I volunteer to be a table manner.
Beautiful. All right, any other business at this point?
Just a question for
Yes.
has anybody else, been on any of our cases for important things? I mean, I don't have any input from citizens in general, right?
Not really.
Okay, just curious.
Well, I'm gonna be very curious to see if there's any feedback on the type of form of government, especially representative versus open town meeting. That, to me, is the fundamental issue. We're
Yep.
not gonna go to a mayor, we're not
Yep.
probably gonna go to a council, but I just don't get any sense that anyone knows or cares, or how do we kick them in the shin and say, pay attention, people?
I think more people are paying attention. I don't know if they have a predetermined solution.
Yeah.
But
People are paying attention to Main Street right now. That's pretty much.
Main Street being,
the real
another
estate
real
office.
estate office going in on Main Street.
A lot of chit chat on Facebook.
what's that?
The Nobby Shop.
The Nobby Shop is renting out their space to a real estate office that's a,
National,
It's public record, but they condoed the Nobby Shop and they sold the
Yeah.
basement and unit 1 for 4.9 million.
Unit 1 being the first floor. Yeah.
yeah, well, the second floor, Reggie used to live on the second floor, because always condoed as far as I
Yep.
know. But who, is this a national outfit
It's
going? in?
William Ravens
There
or
you go.
something, how do you say
William
it?
Rose, Windwalker.
It's
Well, it's
Windwalker.
they
Yeah.
were Windwalker, then they bought Windwalker.
Yeah, and
So now it's just
Ken-
William Ravens.
Kenny,
So big.
Yes.
is running it for them, who was sort of a salesman for a while. It's very interesting. He's in and out of Boston. I know Kenny pretty well from St. Mary's. He
Yeah,
worked with us
right.
on the youth program at St. Paul's.
So is Alan still involved, or
Not that I know
no?
He probably got bought out.
So, and the question, is this subject to the chain business bylaw, right?
Oh, really?
That's the
of.
question.
That's the question. And that's the whole, are we enforcing things
They
that
don't.
people don't feel like the town is
Right.
enforcing?
They don't
See, that's a
produce
good
anything.
example where the selectman could say to the town manager, this is a public issue now, will you please check with town council
That's an interesting
and
one.
report back to us next week?
Yeah.
That's a really interesting.
It is what it is.
Well, a lot of the firms, like on Old South Road, they're affiliated with the national,
Berkshire Hathaway.
and Maury
Right.
people are affiliated with Sotheby's.
Yeah.
So you already have a precedent that has not been challenged.
Right, I think people are making distinction between, I mean, those may be ownership, I don't have any idea. But a marketing arrangement, or I'm borrowing your name for a
Yeah.
fee, is different from I'm owned by you, or so, I'm guessing.
Right.
Mhm.
So that'll be in this week's paper?
Doubt it.
What?
Because we have a chain newspaper.
What constitutes a chain?
Well,
They have standards in the
Yeah.
code.
They do. Like there have to be more than
Yeah,
6
I
or
think it's
whatever.
25.
25 is
That-
it? Okay.
But the one that why this is such an interesting one is, again, CVS couldn't do it, or Trader Joe's, because they produce so much of their, Trader Joe's brand or CVS brand,
Right.
whatever. There's nothing being produced in those offices. It's just an affiliate. I mean, what is their good, and it's like H&R Block, or
Yeah, so the
Right.
goods and services.
A
are-
meeting of the minds,
yeah,
yeah.
it's interesting.
And, yeah.
Well, it's like Cape Cod 5. like
Right.
has over 25 locations. Do they, you know, is that a chain?
That was part of the discussion,
Right.
but then we'd have no banks on Nantucket.
True.
Very true. All right, so next meeting is 3:25, 1 o'clock, same
Here.
place, yep,
Same, yeah, here. yeah.
same,
Yeah.
yep. I'll send out a meeting reminder. But otherwise, at 2:11, can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you all.